In the kingdom of Magadha, under a merciless sky, the summer burned like molten iron poured upon the fields. The earth shimmered in waves of heat. Dust clung to every breath, and the crickets sang their endless metallic drone. Winds vanished, hiding in silence. Rivers shrank into thin veins that carved through cracked stone. Villagers moved slowly, each step a burden, jars clattering empty at the wells, shadows stretching over weary faces. Yet heavier than the heat was the weight of grief that settled in a single house. A grief so sharp it spread through the whole village like smoke. Kisa Gotami held her little child pressed against her chest. His skin was pale wax, his lips colorless, his body stiff and still. No laughter spilled from his throat, no movement stirred his limbs, and his smile had faded into a memory as fragile as dust. She whispered pleas into his ears, shaking him gently, begging for breath to return, but only silence answered. Tears streamed, falling like shards of glass, and the house itself seemed to dim into shadow, as if mourning with her. Her cry burst out into the village streets. Neighbors froze. Women dropped baskets of grain. Men stopped mid-stride with tools in hand. Fear and sorrow etched their faces, for though they all knew death, though every family had tasted its bitterness, to see it claim a child was to witness fire devouring innocence. Whispers moved like snakes through the air. Death spares no home, but whispers could not soothe the storm that raged in Gotami's heart. She ran wild-eyed through the streets, hair undone, her wails cutting the air. She knocked on doors until her knuckles bled, pleading at thresholds, "Please give him breath, give him back to me." At one house, faces wept, but hands were helpless. At another, voices murmured pity, but no remedy. Herbs, prayers, charms, none could stir the stillness of the child's chest. Hope thinned to despair, but she would not yield. Her grief was a storm, consuming, fierce. At last, an elder emerged. His back was bent like a bow, his skin parchment thin, his eyes deep as wells. Leaning on his staff, his voice rasped yet carried weight. "Woman, there is one you must seek. In Jetavana Grove lives the enlightened one, the Buddha. If there is an answer to your sorrow, it lies with him." The words struck her heart like stones, and yet lit a spark in the ashes. Clutching the lifeless child, Gotami set out at once. The road stretched under the burning sun. Stones cut her bare feet. The dust choked her throat. Crows wheeled and screamed above. Hunger gnawed. Thirst scalded. Yet love carried her forward, step after step, as if each breath was a prayer against despair. When at last Jetavana rose before her, it was like finding a green breath against the scorched world. Trees spread their branches wide, whispering cool songs of leaves. A brook wound silver threads through the grove, singing over stones. The air softened, scented with earth and blossoms. The silence here was not empty, but healing. At the grove's heart, Buddha sat upon the earth. His robe was simple, his posture straight as a tree, his breath steady as the beat of a drum. He was no flame consuming, but a flame steady and still. No storm, but the calm sky after the storm has passed. Gotami staggered forward, laid her child upon the grass, damp with dew, and collapsed to her knees. "Master," she cried, "please return him to me. Without him I am hollow. My world is broken." Buddha's gaze met hers, and in his eyes lay compassion vast as the sea, unshaken by her storm. He spoke, his voice low, yet carrying through the grove, like a temple bell. "Bring me mustard seeds, daughter. but bring them from a house where death has never entered. With them, your child shall live. Her heart leapt. The task seemed simple, possible, filled with promise. She rose, with sudden hope, and ran back to the streets of Rajagaha. Markets bustled, clanging with copper pots, vendors shouting, spices burning the air with their fragrance. She hurried to the first house. A woman placed mustard seeds in her palm, but whispered through tears, "My husband was taken by fever in the burning summer. Death has touched this house." At the second house, an old farmer gave her seeds with trembling hand. "My father died in the winter frost. Death has touched here." At the third house, a family wept as they offered seeds. "Our daughter faded in the spring bloom. Death has touched us too." From house to house she went, seeds filling her palm, each heavy with another story of loss. Husbands, wives, children, parents, all had been touched by death. Her steps slowed, her tears thickened, her hope turned to lead. The sun sank in red embers, shadows lengthened, the sky turned deep blue. The moon climbed, spilling pale light across silent streets. The marketplace stilled. Crickets rose in chorus. Leaning against a wall, Gotami looked at the seeds trembling in her hand. None were pure. All were shadowed by death. And she saw, at last, the truth. There was no house untouched. Death was not a stranger, but a neighbor. The truth slid into her heart like a cool wind entering a burning room. She lifted her gaze to the moon, calm upon the rooftops, and knew that death belonged to all. With slow, heavy steps, she returned to Yatavana. The brook murmured its silver tune. Leaves whispered as if welcoming her back. Buddha sat unmoved, steady as dawn. She bowed low, her voice soft as ash drifting. "Master, every house I entered has known death. I found none untouched." Buddha's eyes glimmered with moonlight. He said, "Do you see, child? As birth enters every home, so does death. Nothing is eternal. All things are impermanent. Suffering grows from clinging, but release brings peace. To love is not to chain, but to honor without grasp." His words fell like rain upon parched earth. Something within her loosened. Something long bound began to stir. She looked at her son's face, still and pale, but no longer as wound, no longer as cruel theft. Now he was a circle completed, a candle extinguished at dawn. Her tears flowed again, but they no longer drowned her. They cleansed. She bowed, whispering, "Master, forgive my blindness. Let me follow you. Let me learn the way." Buddha inclined his head, his smile a light without flame, a blessing without need of words. Days passed, like the stream winding through the grove, steady and cleansing. Gotami joined the disciples. Her hands learned the rhythm of simple tasks. She swept the pathways, each stroke of the broom like brushing sorrow from her chest. Each leaf lifted was grief released, each cleared stone a burden set down. Her grief did not vanish, but it transformed. Meals were plain, bowls of rice warm as kindness, water cool as mercy, fruit sweet as grace. She ate slowly, honoring each taste, no longer filling emptiness, but honoring life itself. Her robe was plain cloth, sewn with patience, worn as though it were the sky's embrace. Sunlight warmed her, shade cooled her, and she learned not to cling to either. At night, sorrow returned like waves. She would hear echoes of her son's laughter, piercing, but she no longer collapsed. She sat with the ache, watched it rise and fall, like the tide. Sometimes she whispered to the stars, "Little one, Your light guides me still. The stars gave no answer, yet their stillness soothed. Villagers began to come to her, mothers with hollow eyes, fathers with trembling voices, elders bent by grief. They sat beneath the Bodhi's shade and poured their stories into her lap like grain. She listened without interruption. Her silence was her gift. Her eyes told them, "Your loss is mine too. We drink from the same deep well of grief." Hands met hands, tears mingled, and silence healed more than words could. Buddha taught impermanence as weather. Clouds gathered, broke, and drifted. "See," he said, "no storm remains. Even the fiercest yields to the open sky." Gotami absorbed these words as marrow. She learned to welcome arrivals with open palms, to bow at departures without collapse. She learned to honor moments as guests, not as prisoners. The moon became her teacher, rising, waning, returning, never grasping the night it brightened. She taught children, "Count your breaths. Each one is a raft when storms lift the lake." She taught elders, "Feel your feet on the ground. Even when memory unroots trees, the earth remains." Her words were not sermons, but small lamps placed where darkness pressed hardest. The parable of the mustard seed traveled. Traders carried it to markets. Monks spoke it in distant temples. "Bring a seed from a deathless house" became a phrase that opened hearts. Kings heard it. Farmers heard it. Both bowed to the truth. Temples filled with softer prayers. Markets hummed with gentler bargains. Homes with quieter strength. Gotami refused titles, asked no honor. Her name became a path between grief and understanding. She was no saint, no goddess, only a mother who had walked through fire and returned carrying light. Her child remained near, not in shrine or chain, but as a steady star in her memory. She did not clutch him. She honored him, as dawn honors night, as rivers honor rain. Seasons turned. Mango blossoms drifted in spring. Monsoon rains swelled rivers. Winter fires glowed. Festivals sang with drums. At each turning, she kept to the path. On anniversaries, she set a bowl of rice beneath the Bodhi. The wind rustled leaves like applause. The brook wove silver into roots. She whispered, "May all who suffer find a door." News of her journey spread from Magadha to Kosala to Vaji to distant lands. Her story became a mirror. Each who heard it saw their own grief reflected, softened. It did not remain in books or chants. It lived in kitchens, in fields, in the laughter of children, in the silence of mourning elders. It became a proverb: no house without death, no heart without letting go. Thus, Kisa Gotami's grief was not erased but reshaped. It became a lantern, glowing in trembling hands, bright enough to guide others. Her child's silence became 1,000 voices. Her pain became 1,000 doors. She walked not alone, but with all who suffered, all who healed. And so, the parable endured, ordinary yet eternal, simple yet unshakable, not because death was conquered, but because compassion was born in its shadow, not because loss was undone, but because peace learned to live beside it. This was her gift, impermanence revealed as the beginning of freedom.